Hello and welcome again to another episode of Sacktown Talks. Today we're pleased to join Jaime Zepeda, candidate running for Senate District 10. Jaime, how's it going? Thanks for joining us.
Doing well. Thank you for having me here.
Hey, yeah. For our listeners, I guess who don't know you, can you kind of give us let us know a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So my story starts with being, growing up in a working class family in Mexico. I actually grew up in Mexico for the majority of my life. And once I came to the United States, I came here as a teenager. I came here alone. And so I had a very different high school experience than a lot of people. I went to school during the day, and then I would go home to an apartment that I was renting out, change, and get to work. So I was mopping floors, cooking meals. Unfortunately, it wasn't really enough, and so I was poor for, years. And then I got my one-way ticket to this magical place called the Bay Area, because I was accepted to St. Mary's College. And so I've been in the Bay Area ever since, close to 20 years now. And I've spent my time here working in mission-driven organizations, for-profit organizations, but also being an advisor on the board, fundraising and organizing for nonprofits that are doing work on the ground around things like homelessness, undocumented immigrants, income inequality, and education.
Okay, really. What year did you graduate from St. Mary's?
2007.
Okay, wow, nice.
Go Gales.
So, so basically, did you immigrate from Mexico by yourself?
So I came here to the U.S. by myself. Yeah, I made
Wow.
the trip on my own
As a teenager, wow.
as a teenager. Yeah, it was it was a wild experience. And so I don't think, I would not wish that on anybody because, I mean, anybody out there who's listening who is part of an immigrant family or is an immigrant themselves know that it's a very, it's a very lonely experience in a lot of ways, right? You come to this country where you just don't know much about it. For
Right.
some, even for me to a certain extent, you can't even communicate with anybody around it, right? But you're really trying to find a way where you can belong and make it work. And I'm a big proponent of immigration. I think that it's a huge part of why the United States is the country that it's in, the
Right.
country that it is. And I have a lot of empathy for that experience because I went through it.
I guess kind of going through the process, kind of, I guess, how did you come across the border and kind of come to immigrate here in the U.S.?
Yeah, so my my story on that one too is fairly unique because I was born in the United States,
Okay. You were
but
born a
because
citizen.
I was born a citizen, but because my parents couldn't stay, my dad was doing a business trip. He still has a small business, and he had a lot of business that he did in California. And so on a on a business trip, my mom, who was his sole employee, because there was nobody else there, she was pregnant with me, and she went, and I came in early, and so that I was born in Watsonville, California, so like in the Santa Cruz Valley.
Right.
And but then I couldn't stay because my parents couldn't stay. So then I went back and I grew up my entire childhood in Mexico. And then at a certain point I said, well, I have to do something with this. I have to go back home, right? In some ways. But I had to do it alone because my parents couldn't come with me. And so then
Right.
I made my way over 3,000 miles to Rockford, Illinois.
Wow. And kind of what was the discussion with, your parents and stuff about, why to go to the US versus, staying in Mexico?
It's a good question. It's largely because I grew up in Mexico, which is it is one of the worst countries in the world around income inequality and corruption. And people talk a lot about the American dream here fading away and being more and more difficult to achieve, which I agree, right? I think that is sort of what's happening. In Mexico, it's not even a dream, it's like a fantasy, right? The thought that you can go from one class or improve your lot over time is hardly ever happens. Like here or in Mexico is like where you're born, that's your destiny, right? If you happen to be
Right.
born in a working class family and a low income family, that's what you're going to be. Like it's just unfortunately there's a lot of systemic barriers to that. And so, as we were discussing this as a family, I made the choice like, I if I stay here, I'm not going to be able to do much, at all. And I have this, this privilege that I saw a lot of people in my community, friends and family, literally risk their lives for, right? To like
Right.
try to make a life in America. And so those two things together is like, I have to try, I have to see what's going on. And so I did it, it was a very painful experience because I did leave behind everything that I knew and loved. But, at the end of the day, I think it was the right choice.
Yeah, wow, that's fascinating. Brave. I guess how much English did you know, before you moved up?
Not a lot, not a lot. It was, I picked up my English from watching Saved by the Bell and reading comic books.
Nice.
So,
Taught by
and that's,
Screech.
yeah, exactly. Screech was my teacher. And that's, I think, in some ways why I don't have an accent. People ask me, why don't you have an accent when you're speaking? It's like, because I mirrored what I watched on TV and
Yeah.
people,
Why do you sound like you're from the beach, dude?
yeah, exactly.
That's funny.
It's like, because,
Right.
Slater was my mentor.
Yeah. You use some weird words. People are like, why are you talking like that?
Yeah, where do you talk like a 1990s sitcom? Like, because
Right.
that's what it was.
Right. That's funny. So kind of, what are you doing now? Are you in local government or anything?
I am not. So I'm not in local government. I'm in Castro Valley, which the only thing that there is here in terms of local government is the school board, and the MAC, which is like an advisory council. So we
Right.
don't, we're unincorporated. We don't have a city council. We don't have really anything else that we can, call local government. It is an ongoing conversation. I think there is some potential where that might change in the future, but so I'm not in that. I have been I've been involved in politics for decades. So I studied politics at St. Mary's. I graduated at the top of my department. And then right after I graduated, I became an organizer for then Senator Barack Obama's first presidential run. And ever since then, I've always been doing something like that, even if I wasn't working in it. Like I've been on the campaign team for campaigns at the local level, at the state level. So I've always been involved in some way, but I've never been the candidate myself.
Okay. So what made you kind of make this jump to run for Senate now?
It's a lot of things, but really at the end of the day, I think it's something that I've been thinking about for some time because my parents, taught all of us, taught my family, my sister and me, is there's always something that you can do to serve the community, right? We grew up, working class. We don't have a lot, but we had enough to give back, and so we'd be out there cutting the hair of people who were in the street for free. We'd be teaching adults how to read and write. We didn't have money to give, but we had things to give, and so I've always been just gravitated towards service. And the last 18 months, because of those organizations that I mentioned that I've been involved in, which have helped, people who are experiencing homelessness, undocumented immigrants, survivors of domestic violence, low-income students, all of those are populations or groups that have just been pummeled by the pandemic, right? All of those things that I mentioned have gotten so much worse in the last 18 months. And so I got to see that firsthand as I was trying to help them. And I just say, if nothing else, I have to raise those voices because I didn't really see that a lot. And I haven't seen that a lot, really, to be honest. A lot of the things that I see, even from my opponents, they're just kind of like the same old ideas and approaches that haven't fixed these problems. That's the reason why we're kind of kicking the can down the road. And in my community, as I talk to people in Castro Valley and Hayward, they sort of say the same thing. It's like we're not the same things. We're still talking about the exact same things we were talking about 10 years ago, like housing and climate change and income inequality and, the education system that needs to be better. It's not changing, and I'm just drowning in what's going on. And so, I said I had to like throw myself in there and raise those voices because I'm really not hearing them right now. So that was a large part of it.
So I guess how's the race shaping up? What are we, about 10 months from the primary? Kind of who are the contenders right now?
Yeah, so the race is it's about 10 months away. Hoping that there's no move around that because of redistricting, but we'll see. So right now my opponents are the Hayward Council member, Aisha Wahab, and Mayor Fremont Lily May.
Okay. And I guess, them being local elected and I guess kind of having some name ID within their own communities, kind of, how are you getting your name out there and really campaigning right now during COVID?
It's a little bit of new school and old school. It's old school. We're going out there door to door. We're going out there to some of the neighborhoods where people tell us even then when we knock on their door, like nobody ever comes here, right? Like nobody's ever coming in here to ask me, what I think about the race or what I think about what's going on or, asking for my support. So we're doing that. which has been really successful. Like we've been getting some great traction that way. And excuse me, almost everybody that we talk to wants to hear more, wants to support. The other way is we're doing it a little bit of new school because of COVID, right? We can't do as much in person gatherings outdoor. We do them to a certain extent indoor. We don't do them at all. And like, depending on how the Delta variant is shaping
Right.
out, we're trying to err on the side of safety. Because at the end of the day, we don't want this to become something that creates more harm than good. And so we're doing a lot on social. We're doing a lot on email. We're doing a lot of virtual kind of Zoom conversations like this, right?
Right.
To get our name out there. And we're just kind of essentially like leveraging the networks that we have through the supporters that we're getting to get our name and our message out there. But I mean, to be honest, it is tough. It's tough during COVID.
Yeah.
It's
Kind of. I guess
yeah,
what are some of the challenges kind of you're facing and running right now?
yeah. I mean, the challenge is, I think there's a challenge and then there's opportunity. The challenge is what I mentioned, where it's hard to connect with people, right, in person, and all of us are just exhausted of Zoom, right? No offense. I mean,
Right.
enjoying our conversation, but I
Yeah.
mean, you know what I mean, right? Like we're all just, okay, another Zoom call.
Right.
And so we've noticed that where people are there, but you can't get the same thing that you're getting that if you're in an event where you just get energized, you connect with people, right? We talk. So we're missing that for sure. I think the thing that we are benefiting from and is the idea that we're all in this pandemic together, right? So it's something that we can just naturally talk about right away. And I've just noticed, even from when I first started here in the Bay Area nearly 20 years ago, that people are just more in tune to what the problems are in the district, right, than before. Like almost like in a way, that pandemic has like drained the lagoon, right? And we're kind of seeing like what's the disparities, the inequities,
Right.
the fact that a kid in San Leandro has to take 3 different buses to get to his public school because there's not a lot of investment in public infrastructure in his area, stuff like that. Like that's just becoming more and more common knowledge. And so people want
Right.
to do something about it. So they're eager to help out.
I guess that kind of rolls into the next question is what kind of some of the main issues you're seeing that kind of need to be addressed here?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, some of the things is sort of what I already mentioned, right? So we have, I think in California is a perfect microcosm of just like the issues that we have in the entire country. And in the district that I'm in, District 10, it's a perfect microcosm of California. So we have the conversations around climate change, COVID, in particular, COVID. What are the long lasting impacts of COVID, not only health wise, but also for students and learning loss, right? Small businesses, which are obviously shuttering at a faster pace than bigger businesses. What does that mean for workers' rights? What does that
Right.
mean for ownership of the market by bigger businesses because now they have fewer competitors? Education, income inequality, housing, business, small business relief. All of these things are things that we're hearing more and more. And some of the things that I'm proposing are not necessarily new ideas because I'm not, like a genius that came up with all these things on my own, but I'm like borrowing from things that I'm hearing from other people. And a lot of people are appreciating, excuse me, the fresh perspective. So I'll give you like a few ideas, right? Of what we're saying as these are things that could actually move the needle on these really wicked large problems.
Right.
Right? So, for example, income inequality in California is closer to Mexico than it is to Canada. We have our income inequality in this state is much more like a country like Mexico.
Right.
It's
Especially in your district.
exactly in the
Yeah.
district that we're in. Income inequality is huge. Um, California is terrible around income inequality. A lot of people don't talk about that, but it's true. And then in our district, it's pretty bad. So one of the ideas that we have, again, not my own, but I'm just picking from great ideas that are here out there, is how do we inject a whole lot of wealth into every single poor family in California? And we can do this in a way that is already being done in other parts of the country, which is every poor family gets ETF, right? So that's like essentially like a bundle of stock market tracking stocks, right? They're giving that, and that grows over time. They're able to pull out that money at certain periods, right? They can't pull it out like a savings account, like every year or anything like that. at certain periods so that it has enough time to accumulate over time.
Right.
They can pull it at a point where that could be something that they could use for a down payment for a home, which of course is one of the most important ways to build wealth. They can do that to be able to pay for college for their kids, or to essentially be the last generation in their family lineage that is in poverty and break the poverty cycle. Now, this is something that just got passed in Connecticut, right? This is not something that is pie in the sky. This is actually getting done right now. And I call it family bonds, right? And right. I'm working with people who are much smarter than me to figure out how this can end poverty in California for good. So those are some of the ideas, right, that we're throwing out there. We have more, but we need fresh perspective to some of these really stubborn challenges.
Yeah, it's interesting. I went to school in the Santa Clara area, so kind of familiar with a lot of the issues and the housing prices.
Yeah.
I always thought the city of San Jose also had some unique programs down there where they had, down payment assistance and things like that for first time home buyers and things like that. And kind of as those Bay Area housing prices kind of extend, further into the valley and further away, a lot of those programs could definitely be helpful kind of statewide.
And there's some good ideas like already being tossed around in the Senate and the Assembly right now. Like one, for example, is around can we just allow housing that does not have any parking space requirement to it? Right. That's a great idea, and that's something that's pretty new, right? I think I appreciate that that's being thrown out there as an idea because it addresses the issue of housing density. It also addresses the issue of how do we encourage more people to use public transportation to make cities more walkable. I know that there's a lot of things that we could do to increase the number of bike lanes, right, all across the state. They've been proven to be fantastic for small businesses, for health, for all of these important metrics. We need more of that. We need more fresh thinking like that.
Kind of what are the demographics of your district, and kind of how do you see the race lining up that way?
It's interesting, there's it's very diverse. So we have a very diverse district. Probably I don't know. I haven't done like the analysis on this one, but I think it's probably one of the most, if not the most diverse district in all of California in terms of race, ethnicity that's here, right? For example, like in Fremont, we have a huge Afghan population. They call, many people call it Little Kabul, right? That's there. And, it's something that is important to notice because, of course, we see what's going on right now in Afghanistan. And the conversations that I'm having with people in Fremont have been very different over the last week or so, right? Because they're talking about like, okay, what's going to happen there? What do we need to do? What can we do with what's going on? And I think overall we have a fairly, I would say, fairly young district. The average age in our district is, I think, around like 37. So average age, the average age for legislators in California, and is not 37. It's a little bit higher. It's 54. But those are the important things to call out, is that there's not really a lot of representation here around those sort of things. And then as I jumped into the race, I found out that there hasn't been a Black or Latino legislator in the Bay Area for over a decade. And we haven't had it, which is shocking to me, considering the diversity that's in our district and all of the Bay Area. But that's sort of the things that tells we need to change the sort of representation that's in Sacramento.
That's interesting. Kind of, part of campaigning is always fundraising. Kind of how's that going, and kind of how are you responding to kind of constantly asking people to help you?
Oh, I love it. No, I don't. But I do love the conversations that I have. It is anybody out there who's thinking about running for office. It is definitely a skill that you didn't know you had to know, and it's an important skill, right? Because you have to have these conversations with people to say, tell me, how I can earn your support, right? That's what they always.
Yeah, you got to sell yourself, right?
You do, and you have to do it in a short amount of time, right? You can't say, hey, let's go out and get some coffee, especially nowadays, right? So that I can tell you what I stand for and what's important to me, and maybe we align, right? So it was something that's new to me. I do enjoy talking to people, and I love listening what's on their mind. We have taken a pledge We're the only candidate in this race that's taken a pledge to not accept any corporate PAC money whatsoever. We're the only one that's doing that. Obviously, that puts us at a huge fundraising disadvantage. And we knew it. We knew that's what was going to happen. We're doing it because I personally believe I am not anti-business at all. I have an MBA, from Berkeley. I have been in business for a long time. My father, small business owner. I've been a small business executive for a large part of my career. I just do not believe that business is a person. That's the end of it. And because of that, they should not be involved in the conversation that impacts people directly, right? They do not have the same rights, the same liabilities as a person, right? So then why should they do that? So I'm not anti-business. I just don't believe that they should influence the decision-making process of anybody who's making decisions on behalf of people. So that puts us at a huge disadvantage. It puts us also at a huge advantage because whenever we talk to people about what we're running for, what we believe in, like right away, almost instant credibility. Once we tell them we're not taking any corporate PAC money, we're not taking any oil money, because then they're like, oh, okay, so if you get elected, you're actually going to do what you're going to say because you're not beholden, by someone, or you're going to fight for the things you said you're going to fight for right now, rather than saying, oh, well, we're open to hearing everybody out, and then later on you kind of triangulate a sort of vague position that doesn't do anything. People automatically get it, like, okay, you're actually going to listen. You're going to try. You're going to say what you're going to do. And so we get instant credibility with almost everybody that we talk to.
Right. And, I guess the other part is, fundraising with the other part is endorsements. Kind of how are you working there and kind of getting endorsements of other local electeds and other kind of groups?
Yeah, I enjoy that a lot because I'm getting to continue the conversation that I had with a lot of the community leaders here. Right. Unfortunately, and this is probably not new to anybody that's listening to your podcast here, it's endorsements and money go hand in hand, right? So for some organizations, they're like, okay, yeah, talk to me when you reach this number up here. Right now, we're not going to pick up your call. And so, we respect that. We appreciate that. We don't agree, but that's how it goes. We have also found organizations where that's sort of what they want. They want a campaign that is focused on ideas, on the message, rather than on finding, a ground that doesn't piss anybody off because we want to get the money. So it's interesting. It is my first time running for office, and I found all these things very fascinating. And I'm learning, as I go. We have, started some great conversations with a lot of school board members, a lot of sanitary district folks, a lot of organizations that either support some of the ideas that we have, or who we are as our campaign. And so we're hopeful that things are actually going to work out and we're going to get some great endorsements. We've gotten some great endorsements already, which we have on our webpage, from small business leaders, small business chain leaders, nonprofit executives. We've gotten it from former political candidates, people who are on the ground doing the work. Now we're making our way and talking to people in the establishment to see if they're open to hearing what we have to say.
Have you thought about reaching out to, I guess, other local assembly members in the area, like Alex Lee or something like that?
We have, and there's a lot of things that we agree with on a lot of these folks. Unfortunately, excuse me, some of them have committed already to another candidate, and so we respect that. We still talk to them to get to know them and do that, but some of them have already committed.
No, understandable. So I know you got to go, you got to wrap, but what's I guess your final message out to voters of why they should kind of vote for you coming up in June?
Yeah, absolutely. So for anybody out there that's listening, that's liked what we have to say so far, anybody who's, staff at the Capitol, or anybody who works there, or anybody who's like playing the inside baseball here. If you like what I've said so far, we'd love for you to support us. You can go to zepedaforsenate.com. So that's ZEPEDA forsenate.com. You can find me on pretty much any social channel. Just find my name, Jaime Zepeda. And the last thing that I'll say here is, if you believe that the last 20 years have gone the way that you want them to in California, then I would say don't pay attention to our campaign at all. Go and take a look at the other opponents. They're probably more in tune with what you're looking for. If
Right.
you have, been saying to yourself at least more than once, we're just not getting stuff done and we're having the same problems, over and over again, then I would love to talk to you, because that's what we're doing here, right?
Right.
Is I am not part of the system. I am not running to make this a career. I'm running to serve that second word in public service, right? The service part. We often forget about that. It is supposed to be a public service. And I'm here to raise the voices of people who have previously been ignored, because it's the right thing to do. And then after I do that, then I will move on to another thing. I'm not trying to run and make this a career. I'm running to make a difference. If that's interesting to you, then we hope to hear from you.
All right. Well put. Well, very interesting, Jaime. Thank you so much, and look forward to checking in with you as the primary nears closer.
I appreciate it. Thanks for the time.
All right. Thanks, Jaime.